millennials are going through, like how like they're navigating this cultural tradition that has been, you know, embedded in Indian culture for so long. They're following it and they're kind of exploring how it's turning into like this new, almost kind of a dating situation. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, and I was surprised by how much of a business this is. So the main character is this woman called Seema Auntie, and her job is just to be a matchmaker.
In India, marriage is a very big industry, a very big fat industry.
And it is a business. She goes out to find clients. She works with the families to help them find matches. She consults astrologists to see if these things will work. And there's a whole regimented process. You know, she will send potential mates what's called biodata, where it's like a one-page rundown of who this person is, and then you pick and see if you like them or not. It is much more intricate of a process than I think I assumed before watching it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I know like a lot of my cousins like went through that process of like you guys like swap biodatas, and I think someone actually like described it as manual Tinder on the show, which is a very good description because it essentially is that, right? Like you have this one person who is like the medium between these two families, which in India is really important because the families also connect. It's not just those two people, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on, you know, what your preference is. But yeah, I was in awe, but I was also really scared of Seema Auntie. I was like, oh my god, she reminds me of every auntie that I left back home.
Yeah, I mean, I found it fascinating. And I think my biggest question with this show, after having watched it, is I'm not sure how to feel about it. So I binged it when I finally began to watch it, and I loved it. It was hilarious, it was sweet, I liked all of the characters. The pacing kept me involved, but then as soon as I was done binging the show, I began to read all the think pieces about it, and a lot of folks were saying, this show is problematic. They were saying, you know, it favors light-skinned people, it puts more of the burden on women, it's very classist, it's just like all of these bad parts of finding a partner are on display, and throughout the whole show, no one checks that. And so I wondered, should I have been offended more watching this show? Like, Hafsa, am I a bad person for just not caring about those bad parts of the show and just enjoying Indian matchmaking?
Sam, you are a terrible person. You need to go repent immediately. You're canceled. 2020 is the year that we cancel Sam Sanders, and I regret to say that to you. No, but it is true. I mean, so like, okay, so there's good and there's the bad, right? And my like brother and I were actually talking about this yesterday. So we spent the last 10 years in India. Like I moved back when I was in high school. I lived in a city called Chennai, which is a city in southern India, in Tamil Nadu. So like being from India, like is definitely a big formative part of who I am. You know, I think that Western media has a tendency to portray India in a very condescending way, and I didn't see that here. So that was one of the positives, right? Like, oftentimes in Western media, you see India kind of reduced, or Indians kind of reduced to a stereotype. So I think, like, that's why I loved the character of Ankita so much. Like, she
was the fashion designer, right?
So she was the one who had the denim, like, fashion wear brand. And she was the one who was constantly told, like, oh, you have to lose weight, you have to be more adjusting. Like, you should, like, drop your life to go live with this man that you don't even know. And, like, she pushed back, and I'm like, yeah, like, that's, like, my mom. Like, those are my aunts. Like, these are my friends.
I can look after myself. A man's support is a man's support. But partners need to be equally strong. Yeah, it could be.
These are the women that I know in India that I rarely ever see represented on something as global and big as Netflix. So I think kind of, like, just seeing her push back and saying, like, I'm going to stand my ground was, I think, one of the best positives of the show, and I really appreciated that.
But, so, like, there's positives like that. Like, we are seeing fully formed, independent, young Indians who are their own people and are just as smart and global and worldly as anybody else. But on the other hand, you know, by showing these characters in that realness, we see this dark underbelly of Indian matchmaking.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, all of these couples are thinking about skin tone. And Seema Auntie, the matchmaker, is matching fair-skinned people with other fair-skinned people and talking about that candidly. And so some of that stuff was problematic. How do you take in the good stuff you're talking about as well as that bad stuff?
No, I definitely think that, like, you need to push back, and I think that was one of the things that really, like, bothered me about the show, just, like, the blatant colorism, especially in the last episode. I think there was a young woman from San Diego, and I don't want to name her, but she is, like, rattling off...
You can name her, why not?
Okay, her name is Richa. Sorry, Richa, I have to call you out on NPR.